Back in 1994, the peaceful suburban life of Choctaw, Oklahoma, was rocked to the core. Young Michael Hughes, merely 6 years old and in the care of his devoted foster parents, Ernest and Merle Bean, was whisked away from the safety of his elementary school classroom at Indian Meridian Elementary School by a man claiming to be his father, Franklin Floyd. It was on the 12th of September, an otherwise ordinary school day, when Floyd stormed into the principal, James Davis's office, brandishing a gun. He demanded that James accompany him to Michael's classroom, from where he abducted both Michael and James. They were driven into the countryside, where James was subsequently handcuffed to a tree, helpless, as Floyd disappeared with Michael. It would be 5 grueling hours before James was discovered and freed, but the fate of young Michael remained a mystery. 2 months later, in November, the authorities finally apprehended Floyd in Louisville, Kentucky, but Michael was nowhere to be found. As the investigation into Michael's disappearance deepened, the authorities stumbled upon a series of unsettling revelations. Back in 1975, Floyd, then going by the alias Trenton B. Davis, had shown up in Oklahoma City with a young girl named Suzanne. He claimed she was his daughter. What followed was a decade of transient living, moving from place to place under a myriad of pseudonyms. Suzanne bore Michael in 1988 when she was 17 years old, with Floyd claiming to be the boy's father. Adding to the web of confusion, Floyd then married Suzanne. Tragedy struck again in 1990 when Suzanne died in a questionable hit-and-run incident, with Michael just 2 years old. The finger of suspicion pointed at Floyd, yet no charges were ever filed against him. Soon after Suzanne's death, he vanished, leaving Michael in foster care with Ernest and Merle. The Beans recounted how Michael struggled with significant developmental challenges. He was nonverbal, exhibited limited muscle control, and frequently became hysterical. At the tender age of 2, he was deemed to have the mental capacity of a 9-month-old baby. However, while under the care of the Beans, Michael made significant strides in his development. In a twist of fate, Floyd was arrested 6 months post-abandoning Michael on charges of parole violation. Blood tests revealed that he wasn't Michael's biological father, a revelation that surprised many. When he attempted to regain custody of Michael after his release from prison, his request was denied. This refusal is believed to have triggered the subsequent abduction of Michael from his school. Floyd was convicted of the kidnapping in April 1995 and is currently serving a 52-year sentence, yet he continues to withhold information regarding Michael's whereabouts, claiming only that he's alive and safe. An inquiry into Suzanne's background led investigators to a chilling realization: she was likely abducted by Floyd too, although he insisted that he had merely rescued her. She is believed to have been taken between 1973 and 1975. Throughout her life with Floyd, she lived in various states including Georgia, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Florida, and Arizona. There's been supposed sightings of Michael in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Though Franklin Floyd was sentenced for the kidnapping of Michael Hughes, the mystery of whether he murdered the child persisted. Floyd's accounts of the boy's fate varied wildly, veering from claims of drowning him in a motel pool in Georgia, to burying him in a cemetery, to insistences that Michael was still alive. He seemed to be locked in a dance with the truth, constantly changing his story. In 1997, the long shadow of Franklin's crimes lengthened with the addition of the murder of 18-year-old Cheryl Comesso. Cheryl, a dancer and a former co-worker of Suzanne's, had gone missing after a heated argument with Franklin in 1989. Her skeletal remains, showing signs of severe beating and gunshot wounds, were later discovered off Interstate 275 in Pinellas County, Florida. Franklin and Suzanne had promptly disappeared after Cheryl's vanishing. Chillingly, photographs depicting Cheryl beaten and bound were discovered in March 1995 in a truck that once belonged to Franklin. In 2002, Franklin was found guilty of Cheryl's murder and was sentenced to death. In a 2014 reinterrogation by the FBI, Franklin finally admitted to killing Michael on the day of the abduction. He stated that Michael's behavior irritated him during their drive to Dallas, Texas, leading him to shoot the boy near the Oklahoma-Texas border and dispose of his body on Interstate 35. His confession eerily matched an old report by a witness who had observed a suspicious man with a young boy at an Oklahoma interstate rest area near the Texas border. Franklin claimed to have buried Michael near the last Oklahoma interstate exit. However, a search of the area revealed nothing. Authorities believed that wild animals, possibly hogs, could have consumed Michael's remains. Though Michael's body was never found, his foster parents, Ernest and Merle Bean, have expressed a sense of closure due to the confession, and the case was officially closed. In the same 2014 interview, Franklin revealed details about Suzanne, enabling authorities to identify her as Suzanne Marie Savakis through DNA testing. It was revealed that Franklin, under the alias Brandon Cleo Williams, had married Suzanne's mother, Sandy Brandenburg, in 1973. Sandy had 3 daughters, including Suzanne, and a son from a previous relationship. When Sandy was jailed for 30 days in 1975, Franklin seized the opportunity to abduct her children. Though Sandy couldn't report them missing since Franklin was their legal stepfather, Suzanne's sisters were eventually found safe at a local social services office. Suzanne, Franklin, and her baby brother, Philip, however, vanished. In a startling development in 2019, a man named Philip Steve Patterson came forward, suspecting he was Suzanne's long-lost brother, Philip Brandenburg. His adoptive mother had known Sandy, and he was reportedly adopted through Sandy and Floyd, with his birth name being Philip Stephen Brandenburg. DNA testing in 2020 confirmed that Patterson was indeed Suzanne's half-brother, Philip. His adoption had taken place privately in North Carolina shortly after his birth. On January 23, 2023, Franklin Floyd passed away in prison, aged 79. His death marked the end of a twisted saga of crime, abduction, and murder that had spanned over decades. Jeremy Tolles was not your ordinary guy. He was a charismatic young man, full of life and energy. Jeremy had a knack for brightening up a room, transforming a quiet gathering into a lively party with his vibrant personality. A former football enthusiast, he played at Star Spencer High School and even secured a scholarship at Langston University in 2006 as a defensive back. Everything took a turn when Jeremy was unexpectedly shot in the leg while leaving a pizza joint with friends. This incident shattered not just his leg, but his spirit as well. It transformed Jeremy, making him wary of his surroundings and leading him to carry a firearm for personal safety. Despite his challenges, Jeremy was known for his generous heart. His mother, Gladys, recalls, there was nothing he wouldn't do to help people. He would stop and help people on the side of the road if they needed it. He was a sweet and loving person. After the birth of his daughter, a spark returned to Jeremy's life. He adored his little girl and took every opportunity to spoil her with presents. He relished cooking meals with friends and was renowned for his affability, kindness, and confidence. Jeremy worked for a local telecommunications company where he was not only a diligent worker but also a favorite among customers. He was determined, he was ambitious. Customers would call back and ask for Jeremy by name. "We were just blessed that he was a part of our lives," said his supervisor, Kia Marshall. On April 9, 2011, Jeremy spoke to his family for what would tragically become the last time. He planned to visit his mother to do laundry and to spend time with his daughter. However, Jeremy ended up meeting with friends in Langston, Oklahoma, instead. Jeremy's mother tried reaching out to him throughout the following weekend, but all her attempts were in vain. 2 days later, a grim discovery was made. Jeremy's body was found in a remote farmer's field near Waterloo Road and May Avenue in Logan County, OK. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, leading authorities to classify his case as a homicide. Unfortunately, the case turned cold over time, despite continuous investigation efforts. Today, Jeremy's case remains unsolved, but his memory continues to live on in the hearts of his family and friends. If you or anyone you know has any information regarding Jeremy's case, please reach out to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation at 522-8017 or via email at tips@osb.ok.gov. Wendy Camp's life was a whirlwind of marriage, motherhood, and unexpected illness. After her first marriage to Christopher Brito, originally from either Sri Lanka or Kuwait, resulted in the birth of their daughter, Cynthia, the couple eventually divorced. In the spring of 1987, Wendy met Chad Noe while working at an ice cream parlor in Edmond, Oklahoma. The pair soon began dating and were quickly married when Wendy became pregnant with their son, Jonathan. However, Wendy's health took a devastating turn when she fell into a coma due to multiple sclerosis, a diagnosis that would come later. In the face of Wendy's medical crisis, Chad appeared ill-equipped or unwilling to handle her physical struggles. Just a week after Wendy's descent into unconsciousness, he informed her mother, Jackie, of his divorce from Wendy and his plans to seek full custody of Jonathan. During this challenging period, Wendy's sister, Kimberly Aisha Shmee, took over the care of Cynthia. However, with a new marriage, pregnancy, and an impending move to New York due to her husband's job, Kimberly found herself unable to look after Jonathan as well. Wendy's parents reached out to Chad's mother, Beverly, to temporarily care for Jonathan, an arrangement she had previously agreed to. However, Beverly clandestinely pursued and won full custody of Jonathan, citing Chad's irresponsibility, marked by having numerous illegitimate children and drug abuse. Wendy's family suspected that Chad had given her drugs during her pregnancy with Jonathan, which they believed had induced her coma. During Wendy's 16-month coma, she and her family were oblivious to these events. Gradually improving, Wendy met and married William Camp in 1990. She successfully petitioned for weekend visitation rights with Jonathan, but after a month of smooth interactions, Beverly started to resist, accusing Leon of molesting Jonathan during visits. Upon finding an empty house during one scheduled visit and being denied access to Jonathan on several occasions, Wendy grew increasingly frustrated. Her protests about her and her family's parental rights being overlooked fell on deaf ears. A court-appointed therapist, Ginger Leto, later dismissed the molestation allegations against Wendy and Leon, with medical tests corroborating that Jonathan had not been sexually abused. Even so, Chad and Beverly persistently violated the visitation orders, leading Beverly to abscond with Jonathan. Wendy's father, Edwin Knox Taylor, responded by becoming a licensed private detective. Their financial constraints had rendered hiring a private investigator unsustainable. While it is unclear whether Beverly was found or turned herself in, she eventually resurfaced, and the court ordered her to permit Wendy to see Jonathan, yet strangely didn't require her to return him to Wendy. On May 29, 1992, Beverly asked Chad to invite Wendy for a visit. Wendy, unable to drive due to her medical condition, agreed to Chad's proposal of Beverly picking her up. Leon, concerned about Chad's intentions, insisted that his sister, Lisa Renee Credier, accompany Wendy. Eager to see her brother, Cynthia also wished to join them. Despite Beverly's visible irritation, she begrudgingly agreed to allow both Lisa and Cynthia to accompany Wendy. The journey from the Camp's residence in Oklahoma City to Chad's home in Shamrock covered 115 miles and took over 2 hours. Upon reaching at around 1:45 p.m., Wendy contacted Leon, informing him that they were at a restaurant waiting for Chad. Following his arrival, they proceeded to his house where Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa spent several hours with Jonathan. After spending a few hours with Jonathan at Chad's home, Wendy, her daughter Cynthia, and Lisa set off for their return journey in Beverly's car at approximately 4:15 p.m. Ida, Beverly's mother, also joined them. Before leaving Shamrock, Wendy managed to make a brief phone call to Leon around 4:42 p.m., claiming that Beverly was in a rush. This was the last time Leon heard from Wendy. Phone company records confirmed the timing of this call. However, the sequence of events that unfolded after this call is highly contentious. According to Beverly and Ida, the plan was to drop Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa off at Oklahoma City and then rendezvous with Chad at a restaurant in Cushing between 7 and 8 p.m. As per their accounts, Wendy engaged in an argument with them during the trip. Ida stated that she could no longer tolerate Wendy's behavior, prompting her to request that Beverly drop her off at her home around 5:15 p.m. Beverly claimed that the altercation continued, and, being fed up with Wendy, she allegedly ordered Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa to get out of her car in a Walmart parking lot in Chandler, situated about 45 miles from Oklahoma City. This was the last known sighting of Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa. As night fell and they had not returned, Leon became anxious and alerted the police. Despite a thorough search across 5 counties, investigators found no trace of them. Naturally, suspicion fell on Beverly, Ida, and Chad. Investigators examined Beverly's claimed timeline, which seemed implausible. She asserted that they had departed Shamrock at 4:30 p.m. and that she met Chad at a restaurant in Cushing at 7 p.m. However, this journey would have taken more than 3 hours. Moreover, the route Beverly took was a slower, 2-lane highway that increased travel time. Wendy's family believes foul play was involved. They argue that Wendy would have contacted Leon or another family member from a payphone at Walmart had she been left there. Wendy's mother, Jackie, is convinced that Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa were murdered that day, implicating Beverly, Chad, and Ida in their disappearance. Chad, Beverly, and Ida remain persons of interest in this case. It was reported that Chad bragged to 2 locals about his role in the presumed murders and claimed that he had disposed of the bodies so they would never be found. However, without more substantial evidence, authorities are unable to build a robust case against him. In a separate case, Ida and her other daughter, Deborah, were previously implicated in the murder of Deborah's husband, John Rawson, who was found shot and stabbed to death in his car on June 12, 1980. They were charged with his murder in 1983, but the charges were subsequently dismissed. In a subsequent turn of events, Ida and Beverly were apprehended and charged with arson. The alleged motive behind their act was to collect insurance money. They were both found guilty in 2007 and served prison sentences. In September 2011, Ida passed away from cancer at the age of 82, without ever being formally charged in relation to the disappearances. The case took a significant turn on April 16, 2013, when the remains of Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa were discovered buried in an unmarked grave 8 feet deep in Pawnee County, Oklahoma. Alongside the remains, investigators also found a Ruger revolver, which appeared to be a .357 model, and a knife. DNA testing, utilizing samples obtained from Kimberly, confirmed the identities of Wendy and Cynthia, while further testing affirmed Lisa's identity. The coroner determined that all 3 were homicide victims. Wendy succumbed to gunshot and sharp force injuries, Cynthia died from homicidal violence of unspecified means, and Lisa suffered fatal gunshot wounds to the torso. Significantly, Cynthia's remains still had duct tape attached. Ida's son and Beverly's brother, Grover Pruitt, was apprehended and his bail was set at $500,000, later reduced to $50,000. Grover allegedly guided the police to the burial site, which was located under a septic tank on a property owned by the Pruitts. According to Grover, Ida instructed him to dig the hole around the time of the disappearances and later ordered him to refill it, disclosing to him that there's bodies in there. Grover was charged with accessory to first-degree murder. Despite pleading not guilty, his case was dismissed by a judge. Grover died on January 25, 2017. Before his death, he revealed that Ida and Beverly were responsible for the murders of Wendy, Cynthia, and Lisa. On March 28, 2014, Beverly was apprehended once again, this time facing 3 counts of first-degree murder linked to the case. On January 20, 2015, she pleaded no contest to assisting in the execution of the murders. As part of her plea deal, she received a sentence of 15 years in prison along with 15 years of probation. Beverly was released on January 7, 2020. In 2006, a family in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was struck with worry when Tina Pitts, also known by the name Seline Richardson, mysteriously disappeared. The 43-year-old mother was last seen at her apartment in the Crystal Bay complex with her ex-boyfriend. Seline was reported missing on November 5 after she failed to pick up or drop off her child at her mother's house. Though the authorities did not find any signs or evidence of a struggle at Seline's apartment, they have not ruled out the possibility of foul play. Seline did not own a car, and there are reports suggesting that she was involved with drugs at the time, but details about this are scarce. Interestingly, when police arrived at her home, it was locked. Moreover, they found Seline's blood inside her ex-boyfriend's vehicle. The ex-boyfriend, whose name has not been revealed by reports, has denied any involvement in Seline's disappearance. However, he is reportedly in custody on unrelated weapons charges. Seline's sister, Angie Pitts, spoke to Tulsa World in 2011, expressing the importance of remembering her sister on both her birthday and the anniversary of her disappearance. Angie stated that it's not just about her sister, but there are many missing individuals whose families are searching for them. Angie has actively been distributing flyers with Seline's picture and continuously advocating for awareness in hopes that someone might have information about her sister. Angie explained that her family is seeking closure. "I still cry a lot," Angie mentioned. She continued by saying, "Nobody's at fault, we say. That's over with. All we want is closure. If she was dead, we could bury her and have peace. But we don't know where she is. She could be alive, she could be dead, we don't know. Nobody will back you or take you seriously if you don't stand up for what you believe in." Angie pledged to continue her advocacy not just for her sister, but for anyone else who has faced similar situations, even if her sister is found. At the time of her disappearance, Seline Richardson was between 5 feet and 5 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed around 150 to 155 pounds. She had brown eyes, and her hair was in a weave with a gray and black ponytail. She had piercings in both ears, scars on her left thigh and right leg, and tattoos on both arms that were not described in detail. She went by several names including Tina Pitts, Seline Pitts, Seline Richard, and Seline Richardson. Her middle name was Annette. At the time of this article, she would be 58 years old. Anyone with information regarding the disappearance of Seline Richardson is urged to contact local law enforcement, the Tulsa Police Department at 596-9143, or email tpdcoldcasehomicide@cityoftulsa.org. On July 27, 2003, Heath Reams was last seen in Jennings, Oklahoma. He was going through a divorce and had been living with Todd Ross and Amanda Sanders Bolstead, two of his pals. At 7 a.m., Reams departed his friend's house. He has not been seen or heard from since. When he departed, he left with no cash, credit cards, or clothes. His mother reported him missing on August 2nd. 5 months after he vanished, on November 3, 2003, his 1997 Toyota 4Runner was discovered tied up in a farm 3 miles east of Jennings. Reams' briefcase and CDs were among the personal items inside, but there was no indication of wrongdoing. The car is white with silver trim, has a damaged antenna, the license plate PVP 676, and a football-shaped University of Oklahoma plate on the front. Reams was a member of the Skinner tank team at the time of his disappearance. As part of his job, he regularly visited other states, such as Nebraska, Colorado, and Wisconsin. His family first believed that he was merely seeking some time alone to process his divorce until he vanished. As more time passed and no one heard from him, they worried. Reams' lack of communication with his family and decision to forsake his young kid are both out of character for him. Sanders Bolstead was accused of killing Reams in September 2012. Along with this case narrative, there is a picture of her. Authorities think Reams was killed with a baseball bat even though his corpse hasn't been found. When Sanders Bolstead was accused of murder, she was already incarcerated due to prior convictions for forgery, hiding stolen goods, credit card fraud, and possession of methamphetamine. She entered a guilty plea to manslaughter in Reams's case in August 2015. 20 of the 25 years of her jail term were suspended. Due to the fact that she failed to notify authorities when she moved addresses, prosecutors later petitioned to have the suspended portion of her sentence overturned. Sanders Bolstead can be sent back to jail to complete the 20 years since the matter is still before the courts. The circumstances surrounding Reams' disappearance raised the possibility of foul play. In February 1985, Terry Schlatter mysteriously vanished from Tulsa, Oklahoma, along with her son, Nathan. Terry was living in Tulsa with her husband, Darrell Schlatter, who was originally from Indiana. Darrell had assumed the identity of a deceased man, including using the man's social security number when Terry first met him. The couple was embroiled in legal trouble as they faced federal bank fraud charges. Their marriage was on rocky grounds, and Terry eventually attracted the attention of authorities when she defaulted on payments for a yacht. She revealed to investigators that her husband had dyed his hair gray and impersonated her father to co-sign for the yacht loan. Following their indictment, Terry fled and was later found in Colorado working as an exotic dancer. Colorado police arrested her for prostitution, and upon learning of the outstanding warrant in Oklahoma, she was extradited. Terry agreed to cooperate with the authorities and testify against her husband, Darrell. In January 1985, Terry sent her son Nathan to live with her mother and stepfather in Springville, Indiana, while she tried to get her affairs in order. Against her parents' wishes, she returned the following month to pick up Nathan and brought him back to Tulsa. The day after retrieving Nathan, Terry called her mother to inquire about some medication for Nathan. This was the last contact Terry's family had with her. Later that month, Terry left Nathan with a babysitter for the day. When Darrell came to pick Nathan up, he told the babysitter her services were no longer needed. This was the last time anyone saw Nathan or Terry. They vanished without a trace. Although Terry had left Darrell in the past, and he had actively searched for her, this time around, he seemed uninterested in locating her. For years, authorities viewed Terry more as a fugitive due to the pending fraud charges, rather than as a missing person. In April 1993, Darrell was charged with the murder of his girlfriend, Erica Hardwick, who died in September 1992. Despite his claims that she had died in a horse-riding accident, investigations revealed that Hardwick had been murdered. Following his arrest, authorities reopened the investigation into the disappearance of his wife and son and conducted searches, including draining a nearby pond, but found no evidence. In June 1993, while in jail, Darrell committed suicide by hanging himself. To this day, Terry and Nathan's social security numbers have not been used, and they have not been seen or heard from since they disappeared in 1985. Their cases remain open, and there is suspicion of foul play involved. The quaint town of Sulphur, Louisiana, was enveloped in an eerie silence when the vivacious Annette Michelle Craver Vale mysteriously vanished on October 5, 1984. The last memory of Annette in the neighborhood was in a brief conversation her husband, William Felix Vil Sr., who goes by the name Felix, had with their neighbors, in which he informed them that Annette had embarked on a journey to Denver, Colorado, to meet friends. Annette's voice was never heard again, and her shadow never crossed their paths thereafter. Nearly 3 weeks later, Annette's anxious mother took it upon herself to file a missing persons report on October 22. In an attempt to allay suspicions, Felix recounted a disoriented tale to the authorities, claiming that Annette suffered from mental instability and had chosen to traverse to Mexico, instead of Denver, from St. Louis, Missouri. There was no concrete evidence to support his claim, though Annette's past involvement with a Mexican young man during her teenage years served as a faint backdrop. The police grew skeptical of Felix's account, particularly because the bus stop he claimed to have dropped Annette at turned out to be non-existent. By December 1984, Felix, showing little remorse or concern, filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and claimed Annette had deserted him. He further cleared out her belongings, generously donating them for a charitable cause. It was as if he was erasing all traces of her existence. However, the dark clouds surrounding Felix's past began to emerge. This was not his first tragedy. His first wife, Mary Elizabeth Horton Vale, had met a grim fate in 1962 in Louisiana. Her lifeless body was retrieved from the Calcasieu River. Felix had described her death as a drowning accident during a nighttime fishing trip, despite the fact that Mary harbored an immense fear of water and the river was not known for fishing. Moreover, the fishing gear was suspiciously unused when the police inspected it. This incident culminated in Felix's brief arrest on murder charges but was never prosecuted. A sinister twist emerged when over 5 decades later, a medical expert revisited the autopsy reports and unraveled evidence suggestive of a violent assault, including bruising and a scarf forced into Mary's mouth. The expert opined that Mary may have been strangled and possibly struck with an oar before being discarded in the river. Following Mary's demise, Felix and his son William Jr. migrated to California, where he soon entangled himself with a new love interest, Sharon Hensley. However, Sharon too vanished in 1973 under perplexing circumstances. Felix cited the same script of her wanting to disappear, this time allegedly taking off on a sailing adventure around the globe with an Australian couple. The tale resumes its focus on Annette. When she met Felix, she was an impressionable 15-year-old, and he was in his mid-40s. They married when she turned 17 and inherited a substantial sum from her late father's life insurance. After their marriage, they embarked on an adventurous motorcycle expedition across the country. However, a distressed Annette, after divorcing Felix, returned to her mother's home, seeking refuge. During her brief separation from Felix, Annette was engulfed in melancholy, isolating herself in her room, even avoiding Felix's desperate attempts to contact her. Astonishingly, Felix reappeared at her mother's house, and reconciliation ensued. In a curious turn of events, Annette's mother was evicted after Annette transferred the property deed solely to Felix's name. They spent a significant amount from Annette's inheritance, with Felix later claiming that Annette had taken the remaining money with her when she vanished. Annette's mother, Rose, was relentless in her pursuit for the truth. Through private investigators and endless queries, she uncovered the eerie similarities between the disappearances of Hensley and her daughter. Felix, in retaliation, wrote a venomous letter blaming Rose for Annette's troubles, hurling insults, and swore secrecy regarding Annette's whereabouts. About a year after Annette disappeared, Felix claimed to have received a call from her, suggesting she was in the wilderness with native communities. However, discrepancies arose, as he had previously claimed to have dropped her off at a bus stop in St. Louis a month prior to when family members claimed to have last seen them together. Furthermore, his claims of speaking to Annette were never substantiated, and his journals had no mention of any such conversations. In 1993, the FBI stepped in, evaluating Felix as a potential serial killer due to the strange disappearance of 3 women associated with him. They contacted one of his former girlfriends who alleged abuse, but due to a lack of evidence, the investigation was abandoned. Felix's son, Bill, died from cancer in 2009, but not before recording a haunting video, recounting that he had overheard his father confessing to murdering his mother. In 2012, renewed interest in the case emerged when investigative journalist Jerry Mitchell published stories regarding the case. Felix, now residing in Mississippi, abruptly fled when confronted for questioning. However, he was arrested in Texas in 2013 and finally tried for Mary's murder. Despite his defense's claims of her death being an accident, he was found guilty in 2016 and sentenced to life imprisonment. Felix, even behind bars, remained unbroken and claimed that Hensley and Annette were alive, cryptically suggesting they were under his protection. In 1997, Annette's heartbroken mother conducted a memorial service in her honor. Currently, her case remains under investigation by the Tulsa, Oklahoma police, as evidence continues to point towards foul play. In 1999, Ashley Freeman lived with her parents, Danny Freeman and Kathy Eketa Freeman, in a trailer home just outside Welch, Oklahoma. Her older brother, Shane, was exhibiting behavioral issues in 1998 and early 1999. After Shane stole his uncle's pickup truck in 1998, the Oklahoma Department of Human Services mandated family counseling. Shane's misbehavior briefly subsided but soon resumed. In late August 1998, Danny was accused of child abuse when a school counselor reported that Shane's buttocks were bloody and bruised. The prosecution argued that Danny used excessive force, but Danny maintained the incident was exaggerated. At a pretrial hearing, Shane told the court he was no longer afraid of his father. Some family members believed Shane's issues stemmed from his attempts to gain his father's approval. Relatives of the Freemans have reported that Danny had a violent temper. He was accused of assault in 1985 after hitting his father-in-law for trimming his bushes without permission. Kathy's parents claimed that Danny frequently unleashed his rage on Kathy and their children. He also allegedly grew marijuana near their mobile home for personal use. The family relied on Kathy's income from Doctors Optical Supply Company, Inc., as Danny was often out of work due to a work-related injury. Kathy was known to be a reliable and kind person. In early January 1999, Shane broke into the home of Loria Bible, Ashley's best friend. The Bible family reported Shane to the police for stealing some of Loria's belongings and money. Shane also took a few firearms from the Bibles. On January 8, Shane was fatally shot by Oklahoma law enforcement officer David Hayes. Hayes was on duty at the time. Shane was driving a stolen car on a country road and appeared to have broken down when Hayes approached him. Hayes claimed that Shane reached behind and drew a handgun, prompting Hayes to fire. An investigation deemed Hayes' actions justified. 2 months later, in March 1999, Danny's child abuse trial began. When the jury couldn't reach a verdict, they inquired if they could mandate counseling for Danny. The motion was denied and all charges against Danny were dropped. Family members of the Freemans stated that tensions between Danny and law enforcement escalated as Danny blamed the police for Shane's death and criticized them publicly. The Freemans' trailer had electricity and phone service but lacked running water. The family, known as outdoor enthusiasts, primarily used a wood-burning stove in the living room for heating. They owned an assortment of firearms, and Ashley often helped with hunting for food. Danny enjoyed arrowhead hunting behind their home near Cabin Creek and had an extensive collection. On December 30, 1999, Loria spent the night at Ashley's home to celebrate Ashley's birthday. Loria's mother, Lorraine Bible, stated that she took the girls to Pizza Hut in Veneta, Oklahoma. This account contradicts the police's claim that Kathy and the girls went to Big Bill's barbecue in Veneta. The group traveled in Kathy's blue Toyota and stopped at Kathy's mother's home to pick up water and feed for the Freemans' livestock. Ashley's boyfriend, Jeremy Hurst, informed investigators that he met the girls at a local Walmart after their dinner. He gave Ashley a silver necklace with a heart-shaped pendant that had her birthstone for her birthday. Hurst said that afterward, he and the girls returned to the Freemans' home. He stated that everything seemed normal before leaving at around 9:30 p.m. However, one of Danny's cousins claimed to have stopped by their home and asserted that Hurst had actually left around 10:30 p.m. Authorities noted that the Freemans' home did not receive any phone calls that night. The next morning, Kathy was supposed to drive Ashley to her driving test, and she planned to visit the county courthouse as the Freemans were considering suing the sheriff's department for negligence in Shane's death. Loria had a dentist appointment and was planning to leave early. The following morning at 6 a.m., a passerby reported a fire near the Freemans' home. Later that day, authorities found Kathy's body amid the debris. The crime scene was not secured overnight because investigators initially believed no other bodies were present. Authorities speculated that Danny might have abducted Ashley and Loria before fleeing, but all of the Freemans' vehicles were accounted for near the home. Danny was the prime suspect in his wife's murder. Loria's car was also nearby with the keys in the ignition. Loria's purse was found upright inside the trailer when Lorraine discovered it, but there was no other confirmation of the girl's presence at the location. The next day, Loria's father, Jay Bible, found Danny's body in the bedroom of the mobile home when he returned to the trailer seeking information about his daughter's whereabouts. Both Danny and Kathy had died from gunshot wounds. Debris in the bedroom had partially obscured Danny's body, which explained why it was initially overlooked. Danny's right collarbone was shattered before he received a fatal wound, as per the medical examiner's findings. The coroner determined that Kathy died around 5 o'clock in the morning. Investigators concluded that the fire was intentionally set to destroy any evidence of the crime. Despite extensive searches, the girls, Ashley and Loria, were nowhere to be found. Ashley had been saving money to buy a used car. Her grandmother Lorraine mentioned that she might have had around $1,200 saved. According to Ashley's friend Hurst, Ashley mentioned she had saved between $3,000 and $4,000. Ashley worked part-time at Roscoe's, a convenience store in Welch, and kept her savings in a Tupperware container in the family's freezer as she didn't have a bank account. Authorities found no trace of this money after the fire. Ashley and Danny had a disagreement earlier in the month regarding the car she wanted to buy, as per Lorraine. Initially, when no information on Ashley and Loria's whereabouts was found, some speculated that they might have been involved in the Freemans' murders. However, investigators found nothing in either girl's background to suggest they could have been involved in such horrific acts. It was noted, though, that there were unverified reports of Ashley possibly being sexually abused. Loria was known to be an excellent student, while Ashley was a member of the National Honor Society. Ashley was on the Welch High School basketball team but couldn't play in the 1999 season due to an ankle injury. Loria, a cheerleader, had plans to pursue cosmetology after high school. Both girls were known to be well-mannered. The Freeman family members speculated that local law enforcement might have been involved in the crime. Hayes, the officer who had previously killed Shane Freeman, and his brother, also a police officer, underwent polygraph tests but were not considered suspects. As years passed, investigators explored various leads, including possible links to serial killers Tommy Lynn Sills and Jeremy Bryan Jones. A significant breakthrough in the investigation came in April 2018, 18 years after the girl's disappearance. Authorities then believed that three men, Wayne Philip Phil Welch II, David A. Pennington, and Ronnie Dean Busick, were involved in the crimes. They suspected that these men went to the Freeman's trailer, murdered Danny and Kathy, set the trailer on fire, and kidnapped Ashley and Loria. Pennington and Welch were already deceased by the time they were identified as suspects, but Busick was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of arson. Both Welch and Pennington had histories of violence against women. Welch, often referred to as Evil, was believed to be the mastermind behind the crimes. He passed away in 2007, while Pennington died in 2015. A few days after the crime, an insurance card belonging to Welch's former girlfriend was found near the crime scene. Despite this, the police did not initially consider it significant and did not collect it as evidence. The car associated with the insurance card was found in a junkyard, but police also did not seize it as evidence. Welch was involved in the production of methamphetamine, and Pennington was an associate who also used the drug. Welch had another girlfriend in spring 2000, who later reported to authorities that she overheard conversations between Welch, Pennington, and Busick regarding the crime. She also mentioned that Welch had Polaroid photos of Ashley and Loria, and even recognized the bed in the photos as the one in their bedroom. The insurance card, which was retained by a private investigator, was rediscovered along with notes in February 2017, and proved to be critical in piecing together the case. Based on the information in the notes, detectives were able to identify and interview witnesses, which provided more leads linking Welch, Pennington, and Busick to the crime. One of these witnesses, an ex-girlfriend of Pennington, revealed that he had both threatened and physically abused her. She recalled him bragging about killing the Freemans during a drug deal gone wrong. The witness claimed that Pennington told her one of the Freeman parents was buying drugs when Ashley and Loria unexpectedly walked in. Pennington and the others decided to take the girls from the scene to have some fun with them. That night, Pennington was driving the Mercury Topaz belonging to Welch's girlfriend and was aware that her identification had been found at the crime scene. Several other witnesses, who were associated with the three men, gave similar accounts of the individuals boasting about their involvement in the crime. Some had seen Polaroid photographs of Ashley and Loria. In some of the photos, the girls appeared to be bound and gagged on a bed, while in others they were duct-taped to chairs. By the time the detectives learned about these photos, they had already disappeared, likely placed in the trunk of a car that was sent to be scrapped and thus potentially destroyed. However, the witnesses were able to describe the photos. There were 10 to 15 photos of the girls. The bed and a blanket seen in the photos were identified by witnesses as belonging to Welch. Welch himself appeared in several of the photos, lying next to the girls. According to Busick, the girls were kept alive for days, possibly up to 2 weeks, near a trailer in Pitcher. During this time, they were assaulted, tortured, and ultimately strangled to death. Busick stated that after Welch abducted the girls and shot Kathy and Danny, he and Pennington stayed behind to set the trailer on fire. Pennington referred to the girls derogatorily. Both Pennington and Welch used threats to keep the witnesses silent, saying that they could end up in the same pit as Ashley and Loria. The witnesses did not come forward due to these threats until they were tracked down and interviewed after the discovery of the missing notes in 2017. Busick claimed to have memory loss and was unable to remember the events of the night of the murders and fire, or the whereabouts of Loria and Ashley. He had been shot in the head in 1978, which resulted in a low IQ and significant brain damage due to drug use. A neuropsychologist who evaluated him observed that he had difficulty processing information. However, it was determined that he was fit to stand trial. In July 2020, Busick pleaded guilty to being an accessory to second-degree murder. He claimed that the remains of Ashley and Loria were in a root cellar of a house on 6th and Ethel in Pitcher. Despite searches, no remains were found. Busick was sentenced to 10 years in prison along with a 5-year probation period. He was released in 2023, serving only 2.5 years of his sentence. To this day, authorities continue their efforts to locate the remains of the girls. The series of events strongly suggest that the girls fell victim to foul play. The case remains a haunting and tragic chapter for the community. On September 1, 1996, Dion Fox was last seen in Tioga, Oklahoma. Since then, there has been no contact or sightings of her. 8 months after her disappearance, her car was found abandoned near Noel, Missouri, with her keys and handbag inside. Interestingly, Dion's mother lived in Noel. Dion had been divorced from Tony Fox since November 1993. Just a few months after the divorce was finalized, Dion felt compelled to file a restraining order against Tony. In a concerning turn, in May 1996, Dion reported to the police that Tony had assaulted her and had ominously threatened, "I'll get you in the dark when nobody's around." However, Dion mysteriously vanished before the case could go to court. As a result, the charges against Tony for assault and violating the restraining order were dropped. Tony claims that he and Dion had rekindled their relationship a few years after the divorce. He contends that Dion's allegations of assault were false. According to him, she was the aggressor, and he only acted in self-defense. Furthermore, he denies ever making any threats against her. Tony suggested that Dion did not want to proceed with the charges against him, which is why she was on her way to her mother's house in Noel to avoid the court case. This coincided with where her car was eventually found. Tony maintains his innocence in her disappearance and asserts that there are 2 witnesses who saw Dion alive after she allegedly went missing. There are suspicions that Dion's disappearance might involve foul play. There has been no activity on her social security numbers since 1996, which is highly unusual. Moreover, her family believes that as a devoted mother, she would never willingly abandon her children. The police departments in both Oklahoma and Missouri continue to investigate the case. Dion's whereabouts remain unknown, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance are still shrouded in mystery. On October 30, 1961, in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, Maxine Green was last seen alive. She has remained missing since that day. Authorities conducted a search in the surrounding areas, including Bird Creek, but were unable to find any trace of her. Before Maxine's disappearance, she had collected a $60 welfare check. At that time, many locals speculated that she might have left town voluntarily. Maxine and Hobart Jess Green, who had divorced in 1959, had 6 children together. Maxine's disappearance occurred just 1 week before Hobart was scheduled to appear in court for non-payment of child support. After he failed to appear, a bench warrant was issued for his arrest, but he was never apprehended. In a twisted turn of events, in 1986, Hobart confessed to the second-degree murder of his infant son, James Allen Derkson. The child had last been seen during the summer of 1984, and his grandparents reported him missing in December of that year. His body was later discovered buried on a property in Jasper County, Missouri, owned by Hobart. The autopsy revealed that the child had been beaten to death. Meanwhile, Norma, the daughter of Maxine and Hobart, who later went by her married name Norma Ballard, was only 12 years old when her mother disappeared. After Hobart was convicted of the murder in Missouri, Norma came forward with claims of witnessing her mother's murder by Hobart back in 1961. She asserted that she had repressed these memories until learning of her father's conviction. Norma recounted the chilling night, saying that Maxine was anxious and unable to sleep due to Hobart's impending court hearing, and had secured the house. However, Hobart appeared at the back door and persuaded Norma to let him in. Hobart forced Maxine, Norma, and Norma's younger sister into a car where his girlfriend was waiting. Once near a swinging bridge over Bird Creek, Hobart forced Maxine out of the car. Norma heard a violent altercation and stepped out of the car to see her mother on the ground, bleeding. As Maxine screamed, Hobart shifted from hitting her to choking her. He instructed Norma not to move. Once Maxine was motionless, Hobart and his girlfriend dragged her to the edge of the creek and buried her in a hole created by a removed bridge piling. Maxine's pocketbook was also discarded into the hole. Horrified, Norma and her sister began crying. Hobart and his girlfriend then gave them tranquilizers and drove them home, warning them to never speak of the incident. Hobart disappeared the following day, and Norma and her siblings subsequently went to live with their grandmother. In 1986, Norma reported her account to the police, but they were skeptical and uninterested in pursuing the case due to its age and Hobart already being incarcerated. Determined to seek justice, Norma hired a private investigator in 1991. Upon excavating the alleged burial site, some bones and dress buttons were found, but no pocketbook. The bones were sent to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and the county medical examiner, but it was determined that they were not human. During this excavation, a witness came forward claiming to have seen Hobart with 16-year-old Cynthia Kinney shortly before she disappeared from a laundry in Osage, Oklahoma, in 1976. The connection between Hobart and Cynthia's disappearance remains unclear. As of now, Maxine's whereabouts remain unknown and her case is still open and unsolved. On the morning of March 14, 1998, Leonard Derkson, a farmer residing near Strong City, Oklahoma, received an unexpected visitor. His 16-year-old son recounted that a man, driving a white 1994 Ford F-150 extended cab pickup truck, had arrived at their home. The vehicle sported a conspicuous yellow tag on the front and possibly had New Mexico license plates. Derkson's son mentioned that his father had told him the stranger was interested in purchasing a horse that Derkson was allegedly selling. He said that they were setting out for a day trip to Elk City, Oklahoma, and Mobeetie, Texas, with plans to return to the farm later that evening. However, as the day faded, neither Derkson nor the unidentified man returned. Interestingly, there was no record or indication that Derkson had ever put up a horse for sale, leading investigators to surmise that the mysterious man might have known Derkson beforehand. The stranger was described as a right-handed Caucasian male, approximately 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighing around 210 pounds, with a bushy reddish-brown beard. He was clad in blue trousers, a black baseball cap with a red No Fear logo, a striped Western-style shirt, and a blue jacket. He also smoked Marlboro Light cigarettes and was estimated to be about 41 years old. In the wake of Derkson's disappearance, there were 2 alleged sightings. The first occurred on the very day he vanished, March 14, when an employee at the Kettle restaurant in Elk City claimed to have seen a man resembling Derkson around 11 o'clock a.m. However, investigators cast doubt on this sighting, reasoning that Derkson had eaten breakfast at home earlier and it was uncharacteristic of him to eat again so soon. The second sighting occurred 6 months later in Amarillo, Texas. An anonymous caller at a local bar contacted the police, stating that he was seated near Derkson. However, By the time detectives arrived at the scene, both the caller and the man believed to be Derkson had disappeared. Neither sighting has been confirmed. It's important to note that at the time of his disappearance, Derkson was grappling with financial troubles resulting from a divorce in 1996. His family described him as a man deeply committed to his son, and they staunchly believed that he would never leave of his own accord. The authorities have expressed concerns of foul play in Derkson's disappearance, but tangible evidence supporting this suspicion remains elusive. Leonard Derkson's disappearance continues to be shrouded in mystery, and his loved ones are left with unanswered questions. The case remains open, with the hope that one day the truth will be uncovered. On a balmy evening of June 13, 1996, at approximately 5:30 p.m., Crystal Dittmeyer, a resident of the Pickwick Apartments in Oklahoma City, was seen for the last time. The apartments, conveniently located alongside West Interstate 240, had a sense of community, especially around the swimming pool area situated on the southern side of the complex. It was there that Crystal, with her hair neatly pulled back into a bun, was last seen. After that, she vanished without a trace. From the outset of the investigation, a shadow of suspicion loomed over Benjamin Harry Crider Jr., Crystal's stepfather. Authorities' suspicions grew stronger on June 14, 1996, when they noticed several injuries on Benjamin's body, including bruises and what seemed to be human bite marks on one of his arms and shoulders. Benjamin attributed these injuries to an accident he had while changing the brakes on the car driven by his wife, Tammy Jean Crider, who was also Crystal's mother. Investigators, meticulous and thorough, examined Tammy's car and documented Benjamin's injuries through photographs. They concluded that there was nothing in the braking system of the car that could have inflicted the type of injuries seen on Benjamin. As days turned into weeks, a startling revelation emerged. Crystal's younger half-brother came forward with a harrowing account. He recounted that on June 13th, he stumbled into his parents' bedroom after overhearing a heated argument between Benjamin and Tammy. There, he claimed, he saw Crystal lying motionless. Tammy quickly ushered him out of the apartment and took him on an impromptu shopping trip. When they returned, Crystal was gone. Tammy vehemently denied her son's claims and has never been charged in relation to Crystal's disappearance. It's important to note that Benjamin was employed as a registered nurse at the Oklahoma State Health Department during this time. Authorities pieced together a theory that Benjamin may have used a garment bag to conceal Crystal's body, which he then transported in his department vehicle. He was believed to have disposed of the body during a time frame he could not account for on the evening of Crystal's disappearance. This theory was corroborated in part by Tammy, who mentioned that Benjamin had purchased a new garment bag the day after Crystal's disappearance. A deeper dive into Benjamin's actions on June 13th revealed inconsistencies. He claimed that he left the Pickwick Apartments at 4:30 p.m. to return his car to the health department, which was a 15-minute drive. However, he did not return home until about 6:30 p.m., leaving a glaring unaccounted-for period. During the investigation, Benjamin's supervisor at the health department disclosed that he had attended a seminar and submitted a travel voucher that day, which contained an additional 100 miles over his usual commute. Evidence continued to mount. DNA analysis revealed traces of blood matching Crystal's type in Benjamin's health department vehicle. A chilling discovery was made inside the apartment: bloodstains on the carpet, table leg, a towel, a pair of pants, a bra, and a bedspread. An empty hydrogen peroxide bottle suggested an attempt to clean further bloodstains. Tammy and Crystal's biological father were subjected to polygraph tests. Tammy's test results indicated deception in her responses to questions regarding Crystal's disappearance. Benjamin, initially agreeing to the polygraph, backed out at the last moment. In light of Crystal's disappearance, the Oklahoma Department of Human Services took the Criders' other children into custody. The couple eventually separated. Interestingly, DHS records showed that there had been complaints regarding Crystal's welfare dating back to 1984, with allegations of neglect and mistreatment, but these complaints were either unsubstantiated or dismissed due to lack of evidence. In a rollercoaster turn of events, Benjamin was charged with Crystal's murder in 1998 and convicted the following year. However, his conviction was overturned in 2001. A subsequent retrial in 2004 ended in a mistrial. Then, in September 2005, as Benjamin awaited his third trial, he confessed to killing Crystal. He maintained it was unintentional, claiming that he had struck her in anger and she subsequently died. His plea deal led to a 10-year sentence, but he was released almost immediately due to the time already served. The prosecution reluctantly agreed to the plea deal, citing a lack of evidence to convict him of murder. Even after his confession, the whereabouts of Crystal's remains remained a mystery. Benjamin claimed he did not know where they were. His secrets died with him when he passed away at the age of 49 in Kentucky, following a heart attack. The tragic case of Crystal Dittmeyer is riddled with dark secrets and unanswered questions. Her memory lingers in the hearts of those who knew her, and the community continues to be shadowed by the grim circumstances of her disappearance. Latricia Fipps vanished on November 20, 2002, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Joseph Gilbert Calvert, her ex-boyfriend, picked her up from work that day so she could pick up their kid from daycare, she told many people. Witnesses witnessed Fipps drive off in his Isuzu Rodeo with Calvert. He says he dropped her off safely at her house, but her mother was expecting her and never showed up, and she didn't bring her kids up from daycare either. Since then, no one has heard from her, and when questioned by authorities, Calvert said he had no idea what had transpired. Shauna, when Fipps vanished, Renee Ramsey, also known as Renee Calvert, was dating Calvert and living with him. When police in New Mexico were called to a complaint of a lady acting hysterical, they discovered Ramsey, who was intoxicated. Ramsey informed the officers that she had been forced to watch her husband murder someone in Tulsa. The New Mexico police sent along the information to Tulsa Crime Stoppers, but at the time, nothing was done, in part because Ramsey identified the victim as Latricia Phelps. Ramsey had relocated to Owasso, Oklahoma, by January 2013. When Tulsa police questioned her during that month, she admitted to them that Fipps had been killed. On the day of Fipps' disappearance, she said that Calvert picked her up and they proceeded to Ramsey and Calvert's house, where they got into a fight. The three of them proceeded to a home that Calvert was refurbishing and offered Fipps a drink that, according to Ramsey, included crushed sleeping tablets. They then left the house together. The three then traveled to a hotel close to Amarillo, Texas, and then to a piece of land close to Tucumcari, New Mexico. As they were strolling across a field, Calvert began strangling Fipps and requested Ramsey to hold her leg as he did so. After that, he placed Phipps's body in his car and continued driving down New Mexico Highway 104 for approximately 30 minutes before stopping to bury the body in an arroyo. Police investigated the incident over time even though no charges were brought at the time. Calvert and Ramsey were detained in New Mexico in the beginning of 2018. Calvert and Ramsey were both charged with first-degree murder, abduction, possession of methamphetamine, possession of drug paraphernalia, and possession of fake identity. Ramsey and Calvert are still awaiting trial. The goal of the investigation is to find Fipps' corpse. Prior to her disappearance, she had adopted a 1-year-old boy, and she was in the process of adopting her 3-year-old foster daughter. She was a devoted mother, according to her mother. Her case may have entailed foul play because of the circumstances. Agency doing the investigation: Tulsa Police Department 918-596-9140. Source details: Tulsa Police Department. Carol Son Carrington Memorial Reward Foundation. KOTV 6. Peter Henderson Jr. of the Tulsa World is on KJRH2, KRQE 13, and KTUL 8. On the night of January 19, 2009, around 11 p.m., Althia Voet, a 41-year-old woman, decided to call it a night. She informed her son Manuel, who was engrossed in a TV show in the living room, that she was beat and headed to her bedroom. After warming the room with a space heater, she turned on her TV and got ready for bed. About half an hour later, Manuel heard his mother's cell phone ring. He was aware she was talking to someone but couldn't make out the conversation. After a short chat with the unknown person, Althia hastily left the house in her nightgown and slippers. Emmanuel, still absorbed in the basketball game on TV, noticed his mother leaving but didn't think much of it as she seemed in a rush and didn't say anything. He didn't hear her car start, so he thought she might be outside talking on the phone. However, Althia never came back, and soon her car was also gone. That was the last time anyone saw her. Althia's daughter, Tiana, woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and saw that her mother's TV was still on. She assumed that her mother was asleep and didn't think anything was amiss. Althia lived with 2 of her 3 grown daughters on South New Haven Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She was a reliable and skilled certified nursing assistant at Tulsa Nursing Center, a job she had held for over 10 years. She was due at work the next morning at 7 a.m., but she never showed up. Her colleagues were puzzled by her unexplained absence. Althia's fiancé, Chris Smith, became worried when he couldn't reach her. Around 1 p.m. on Tuesday, he called Tiana to check if she had seen her mother. Assuming Althia was at work, Tiana called the nursing center, only to find out that she hadn't turned up for work and her cell phone was going to voicemail. Tiana called her mother's cell phone, but got no response. After informing Chris, he advised her to call the police. Tiana hoped her mother would return, but as night fell with no word from Althia, she knew something was wrong and reported her mother missing to the Tulsa Police Department. Detective Marcus Harper took over Althia's case. After talking to her family, it was clear no one had been in touch with her since the previous night. There was no sign of foul play at her house, but her children were convinced something bad had happened. Althia always kept her family informed of her whereabouts, and it was unthinkable that she would just leave without telling anyone, especially because Tiana was heavily pregnant and due any day. Althia had left home only with her car and her cell phone. All her other belongings, including her daily worn jewelry, were left behind. Her space heater and television were still on, giving the impression she didn't plan to be gone long. Police officers talked to Althia's neighbors, but none had seen or heard anything unusual that night. They described Althia as outgoing and friendly, a doting mother who was also devoted to the elderly patients she cared for. It seemed very unlikely she would leave on her own accord. Althia's information was entered into a national missing persons database and a bulletin about her missing car was issued. 4 days after Althia went missing, Tiana gave birth to a son named Stefan. This should have been a joyous occasion, but it was overshadowed by Althia's unexplained disappearance. On January 24th, Althia's car was found in the parking garage of Hillcrest Medical Center in Tulsa, not far from her home. There was no sign of Althia near the car and no evidence of any wrongdoing. Detective Harper reviewed the surveillance footage from the parking garage. He noticed that a white pickup truck entered the garage at 11:55 p.m. on the night Althia vanished and parked where cameras couldn't capture it. 35 minutes later, Althia's car entered the garage. The white truck left soon after, but her car remained. An urgent appeal was made to the public to help identify the white truck. Although there was no concrete evidence linking it to Althia's disappearance, it was suspicious since no other cars entered or exited the garage during the time it was there apart from Althia's car. It seemed probable she parked her car and then left with whoever was in the truck. Investigators were able to identify the truck as a white 2003 Chevrolet extended cab pickup with triangle emblems on both doors. However, this vehicle was never identified. Tiana thinks her mother left home to meet someone she knew, considering she was in her nightgown. Detectives speculate that Althia and the person in the truck might have been involved in a secret relationship, but they haven't found any evidence to back this up. While police think Althia is likely no longer alive, her family believes she was kidnapped and still hope for her safe return. Althia Voet was a caring single mother of 3, who was also enthusiastic about spending time with friends and dancing. She had black hair, hazel eyes, and was 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing 150 pounds when she disappeared. She was last seen in her pajamas, slippers, and a headscarf. Based on the circumstances, the police suspect foul play in her disappearance. If you have any information about Althia, please contact the Tulsa Police Department at 918-596-4600. 1221. In the early 1980s, Sandy Ree's mother went through a divorce. As a consequence, Sandy took on more responsibilities at home, earning the nickname second mother within her family. In 1984, Sandy decided to move out of her family's house and began living with a family friend. She financially supported herself by working at local eateries. Despite moving out, she frequently visited her mother's home to spend time with her younger siblings. She also held the position of president for the Vocational Industrial Club of America at her high school. On the evening of September 19, 1984, Sandy planned to walk to a nearby convenience store at the intersection of Highland Street and Bryan Road to buy cigarettes. At that time, her cousin was working at the Windsor bowling alley, and some of her cousin's colleagues offered to drop her off there. Sandy's cousin later mentioned that she asked him for a ride, but he was unable to leave his job at that moment. Afterward, Sandy reportedly made several phone calls from the bowling alley, trying to get a ride from different people. Around 9 p.m., she was seen leaving the bowling alley with an unknown individual. Sandy has not been seen or heard from since that night. Some investigators initially thought that Sandy might have left of her own accord, but her mother firmly disagreed with this notion. Most agencies classify Sandy's disappearance as a non-family abduction, and the case is being pursued as an endangered missing person investigation. Several theories have emerged regarding her disappearance. One theory suggests that Sandy's ex-boyfriend, who was known to be abusive during their relationship, might have had a role in her disappearance. Though Sandy had moved in with her fiancé a few weeks before her disappearance, she maintained contact with her ex-boyfriend. Another theory posits that Sandy may have accidentally overdosed on drugs at a party, and her body was subsequently disposed of. She was known to be a party girl who occasionally indulged in marijuana and alcohol. A more sinister theory involves the alleged suit parties in the Shawnee area, where it is believed that influential local men traded drugs and alcohol for sexual favors from underage girls in hotel rooms. However, there is no solid evidence to suggest that Sandy was involved in these parties or that such parties even took place. As the years have passed, several individuals who might have had information about Sandy's disappearance have died. Despite numerous searches for her body, no conclusive evidence has been uncovered. The police are still investigating the case, but they haven't had any significant leads in a long time. One detective on the case believes that Sandy might have gone to a party on the night she vanished, and that others at the party could have information about her disappearance. However, this theory lacks concrete evidence to support it. Sandy's case remains open and unsolved. On October 3, 1991, Barbara Ferry was last seen at a gathering in the 500 block of South 12th Street in Chickasha, Oklahoma, where drugs and alcohol were being consumed. She has not been seen or heard from since that night. Gary Quisenberry, one of the individuals attending the party, claimed that Ferry had left to buy cigarettes but never returned. However, other witnesses alleged that after a heated altercation between Quisenberry and Ferry, Quisenberry threw a television set at her, killing her. The police were skeptical of this account and did not consider it credible. In 1996, Quisenberry was arrested on unrelated charges of check fraud. While in custody, he confessed to having killed Ferry. Quisenberry recounted that he and Ferry had been drinking in his pickup truck in Gracemont, Oklahoma, when they got into an argument. He claimed to have struck Ferry in the neck, resulting in her death. Some accounts suggested that she was mutilated post-mortem. Quisenberry stated that he had buried Ferry's body in a remote area of rural Caddo County, Oklahoma, near Gracemont. He led investigators to the location, but by that time, a new road had been recently built nearby. The police searched the area for weeks but found nothing, and Quisenberry was charged with obstructing justice. As authorities continued their search in Caddo County, a second witness came forward claiming to have seen Belinda Sue Susie Lee, who was Quisenberry's sister, tearing up Ferry's identification cards. According to this witness, Lee bragged that she had personally killed Ferry and had buried her right under their noses. Acting on this information, police conducted a search at a residence in Chickasha but, again, found nothing. Due to a lack of corroborative evidence, Quisenberry has never been charged in connection with Ferrie's disappearance. Her disappearance remains unsolved and foul play is suspected, but the case remains open. On the night of March 5, 1983, between 11:00 p.m. and midnight, Mary Eder was last seen after having gone to Skate-a-thon, a skating rink in the 1900 block of Northwest 72nd Street in Lawton, Oklahoma, to celebrate her recent birthday. Her home was located in the 400 block of North Drive in Fletcher, Oklahoma, where two friends picked her up and later dropped her off. According to Eder's friends, when they arrived at her house, the lights were off. However, while Eder was talking towards the house, a light inside the house turned on. They saw her enter the house. At that time, Eder's husband had taken their young son to visit his parents. By the time they returned, Eder had left the house and has not been seen or heard from since. A few days after Eder's disappearance, her sister and brother went to her home. They noticed that none of Eder's belongings were missing, but she was not there. What they did find, however, was some blood on the back porch. They cleaned the area before notifying the authorities. Additionally, some clothes that might have been connected to Eder were found in a trash can in Fletcher. In May 1991, the authorities executed a search warrant at Eder's house and used a chemical called luminol, which is known for detecting bloodstains. They found traces of blood leading from the front door to the porch, down the hallway, and into the living room. The trail ended at the back of the house. Eder's father filed a missing persons report 2 weeks after she was last seen, but this report was eventually lost. As a result, a new report had to be filed in 1990. Eder's husband has since remarried and continues to live in the house that he and Eder shared back in 1983. Mary Eder's case remains open and unresolved. On the morning of July 6, 1967, just before 9 o'clock, Judith Elwell was last seen at her home in the 1100 block of North Meta in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She has remained missing ever since. The day after her disappearance, one of her shoes was found near an abandoned house about a half block from her home, with a short piece of braided rope underneath it. Authorities believe that Judith was abducted and that she lost her shoe while struggling against her abductor. Despite extensive searches, no further evidence of her was discovered. Judith's brother, Mark Elwell, shared his belief that his sister was intentionally abducted. He claimed that 3 weeks prior to Judith's disappearance, he noticed an unfamiliar car, described as a large black vehicle, near their home. He also said that the man driving this car followed him while he was delivering newspapers. According to Mark, the same car was near their home on the night Judith vanished. He suspects that the driver was the one who abducted Judith and had been staking out the house. However, there has been no evidence to support Mark's theory. Nearly a month later, on August 3rd, another young girl named Brenda Lois White disappeared from St. Patrick Drive in Midwest City, Oklahoma. She was only 5 years old. In November of the same year, her remains were found in a shallow grave in a field next to an abandoned house, 11 miles from her home. Brenda's murder remains unsolved. There is speculation that the person who abducted Judith may also be responsible for Brenda's murder. The two girls were of similar age, vanished within a short time frame from the same general area, had similar family backgrounds, physically resembled each other, and both had been instructed not to talk to strangers. However, the girls did not know each other, and there is no concrete evidence linking Brenda's killer to Judith's abduction. A private investigator from Lawton, Oklahoma, named Troy Thiessen, believes he knows who the perpetrator is and that this individual was responsible for abducting both girls. Although the suspect's identity has not been revealed, it is known that he was a teenager living in Harrah, Oklahoma in 1967 and later served time in prison for various crimes, including sexual abuse of his stepchildren. Mark is the only remaining family member of Judith, as both of her parents have passed away. The cases of both Brenda and Judith remain open and unresolved. It's believed that Brenda's police case file was accidentally destroyed in a flood, and that Judith's case file was lost or destroyed sometime after 1967. In the heart of Moore of Oklahoma, the Daniels family, cloaked in an aura of apparent normalcy, held sinister secrets that would come to haunt them. Among these, the most chilling is the mysterious disappearance of 15-year-old Monique Daniels. Born on June 16, 1976, Monique was the eldest of 6 children, consisting of 3 siblings and 2 half-siblings. Her stepfather, Charles Chuck Daniels, was an Air Force sergeant, while her mother, Candace, served as a soldier. Monique's biological father, whom Candace divorced years prior, was a convicted sex offender, though little else is known about him. Unfortunately, the marriage between Chuck and Candace was marred with allegations of constant bickering, and both verbal and physical abuse towards each other and the children. On June 2, 1992, a neighbor reportedly saw Monique packing clothes into a blue Chevrolet pickup truck driven by an unidentified Caucasian man. On the same day, Chuck took Monique's brothers, Andrew and Charlie Jr., on an impromptu fishing trip in the rain while Candace was on a choir trip with some of the other children. Monique was never seen again. What's startling is that her disappearance wasn't reported to the police for nearly 2 years. Monique's parents claimed they didn't report her missing because they believed she left on her own accord and would return. They conveyed an impression of respect for Monique's autonomy despite her young age. This, however, was deeply incongruent with the family's history, as Monique had previously run away when her parents wanted her to have an abortion but was convinced by a friend to return. 6 months after Monique's disappearance, her Aunt Leslie tried to file a report with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, only to discover that no one had reported Monique missing. Despite assuring Leslie she would file a report, Candace never did. Monique's disappearance was only reported 2 years later when her sister Angelique ran away. Upon returning from their trip, Candace and the children found the usually immaculate Daniels home in disarray. There was an empty pregnancy test box, beer cans, and cigarette butts strewn about. A week later, the family received letters and a phone call, allegedly from Monique, postmarked from Dallas, Texas. The letters mentioned that she was married, had a child, and was living in Alaska. Skeptical, family members asked for a handwriting analysis, but the letters were conveniently reported stolen in a burglary the day before Candace was to submit them to the police. Angelique, Monique's sister, later revealed that Chuck forced her to fabricate the letters and phone call. Angelique filed charges against her parents for physical and mental abuse, to which they pleaded no contest. Chuck admitted to orchestrating the fake correspondence to assuage Candace, who allegedly attempted suicide after Monique vanished. After Monique's disappearance, all reminders of her were removed from the Daniels home, her photos replaced with new family portraits. It was as if Monique Daniels had never existed. To this day, the whereabouts and fate of Monique Daniels remain unknown. Chuck and Candace, now residing in Florida, deny all allegations and have ceased speaking on the matter. They have sought refuge in silence while the shadows grow darker and the mystery of what happened to Monique Daniels remains unsolved. In a quaint neighborhood of Oklahoma City, where picket fences and blooming gardens adorned the streets, young Amber Renee Barker was a whirlwind of energy. She was one of 8 children born to Robert and Bonnie Barker, who had separated, leaving Amber to live with her mother at 3119 NW 39 Terrace. With lively brown eyes and chestnut-colored hair cascading down her back, Amber was every bit the adventurous spirit. Known for being a tomboy, she cherished her days working on autos, spray painting, and riding her beloved blue 10-speed bicycle. More than anything, she yearned to be a welder, joining and mending pieces of metal as she believed hearts could be mended too. However, on a fateful afternoon of December 18, 1997, this bundle of dreams took a turn nobody could foresee. Amber had decided to visit a friend at 3041 Northwest 45th Street, just half a mile away. She spoke to her mother over the phone during this visit, her voice unknowingly resonating through the line for the last time. She left her friend's house at 5:50 p.m. With the wind caressing her face as she pedaled down Drexel Boulevard. This was the last glimpse the world caught of Amber. Panic gripped her family as the minutes turned into hours. Her mother's frantic call to the police at 7:20 p.m. marked the beginning of an extensive search. Almost 35 FBI agents, Oklahoma City police officers, relatives, and neighbors scoured every nook and corner. A command post was established, and Rapid Start computer software became the spine for coordinating the search efforts. Late into the night, a glimmer of hope emerged when a family member discovered Amber's silver ring on Drexel near Northwest 45th Street. The following day, her sister Tanya and her Aunt Joan took to the streets with flyers that had Amber's photo. A male witness came forward saying he saw Amber cycling near Drexel condominiums. By then, a storm of anxiety and desperation had taken over the community. On the subsequent morning, in Denniston Park, Amber's bicycle was found resting against a tree. It seemed like it was waiting for her, just as her family was. Amber's tennis shoes, sweater, and a sock believed to belong to her were later found in different locations. But where was Amber? 2 days before Amber went missing, she had confessed to her mother a chilling fear that gripped her soul. She was terrified of her sister Debbie's husband, Daniel John Smith. He was a shadow from a troubled past, a man who had been involved in a kidnapping incident and had a history of substance abuse. Amber had expressed fear that Smith might pull her into his car. It was later discovered that Smith was at Amber's residence on the day of her disappearance and had left in the direction Amber would have been coming from. The neighborhood's worst fears turned into a cold dread when, on December 22nd, Smith's lifeless body was found hanging from a tree. His death was ruled as a suicide. Time trickled away, but Amber's spirit refused to fade. In 2013, a shocking revelation came to light when DNA testing on a blood sample found on Amber's shoe revealed a partial male DNA profile. This led to a prisoner named Forrest J. Rice, who had been with Smith on the day of Amber's disappearance. Amber's family never gave up hope. Her mother, Bonnie, passed away in 2014 with a grieving heart, waiting for her daughter's return. The Christmas presents she had bought for Amber still lay unopened under the tree, as if waiting to be claimed by the eager hands of a child whose laughter had once filled the house. The mystery surrounding Amber's disappearance remains unsolved. On January 26, 2007, Melissa Flores was last seen in Cordell, Oklahoma. At that time, she was at the home of her ex-boyfriend, Ronnie Dean Denny Jr., on South Glen Street. At 8 a.m., she called her sister-in-law to tell her that she was on her way to pick up her 3 children. However, she never arrived and has not been seen or heard from since. Those who knew her described her as a devoted mother, making her sudden disappearance highly out of character. Flores left her car at Denny's residence, along with her purse, cell phone, and makeup. Subsequently, Denny was arrested on charges related to drugs and weapons, but was released with a suspended sentence. It's important to note that Denny is the father of Flores' youngest child. 6 months prior to her disappearance, Flores had filed for a protective order against Denny, alleging that he had threatened to shoot her in the face. However, she later requested that the order be lifted. According to Jason Canterbury, a childhood friend of Denny, Denny confided in him that he had killed Flores. Canterbury claimed that Denny told him Flores died in his arms after he shot her twice with a gun during an argument. Another man, who was allegedly present during the shooting, reportedly called his brother to help clean up the crime scene. Canterbury testified before a grand jury regarding Denny's alleged confession. Denny, on the other hand, denied ever making such a confession and dismissed Canterbury as a drug user. He maintained that he had nothing to do with Flores' disappearance. In June 2014, Denny was arrested in Texas and charged with the murder of Flores. Authorities stated that, according to the alleged confession, Denny used a 9mm weapon to shoot her. In September 2015, Denny was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite extensive searches, Flores' body has never been found, but given the circumstances, foul play is strongly suspected. On the night of June 8, 1999, Michelle Crawford, a resident of Lawton, Oklahoma, was last seen at around 11:00 p.m. At the time, she was living with her parents in a house located on the 2200 block of Northwest Lincoln Avenue. Before she left the house, she mentioned to her parents that she was planning to see a movie with a friend. However, she never returned home and has not been seen or heard from since that night. 5 days later, on June 13th, Crawford's parents stumbled upon her car, a gray 1986 Honda Accord, parked haphazardly on the 1100 block of East Gore Boulevard, situated between the Best Western Hotel and Montego Bay Apartments. The car was found locked, with the exception of the front driver's side door. Inside the car, in the back seat, Michelle's handbag and other personal belongings were found, but there was no sign of her. What puzzled Crawford's parents was that, according to them, Michelle had only 2 close friends, and neither of them had made any plans to go to the movies with her on the night she disappeared. Additionally, there has been no activity on her bank account since her disappearance. Michelle Crawford was a promising young woman. In 1999, she was an English major and a junior at Cameron University. She was a diligent student and had recently been awarded a full scholarship for the upcoming semester due to her excellent academic performance. In addition to her studies, Michelle also held a part-time job at Gibson's department store in Lawton. Her family described her as a kind-hearted, responsible, and hard-working individual, and firmly believed that it was completely out of character for her to just leave without informing anyone. There have been rumors circulating that Michelle Crawford's remains might be buried on private property in Mountain View, Oklahoma. However, as of the time of this writing, these claims have not been confirmed. Michelle Crawford's case remains open, and foul play is suspected in her disappearance. Her family and the community are still seeking answers to what might have happened to this bright young woman on the night she vanished. On the morning of December 3, 2009, Tony Day bid farewell to his family at their residence in Jones, Oklahoma, and set out for Oklahoma City, where he was employed at Kimray. However, Tony never made it to work, and that day marked the last time anyone saw or heard from him. By utilizing the GPS tracking device in Tony's work car, authorities were able to locate the vehicle that same evening. Strangely, it was not along Tony's typical route to work but was parked next to a field in the 13800 block of Northeast 63rd Street. The GPS data indicated that the car had been parked there since 6 a.m. on December 3rd, after making a brief 4-minute stop at Harrah Road and Britton Road. Tony was nowhere in sight, but his lunchbox and sunglasses were found in the car, hinting that his disappearance was sudden and unplanned. Earlier that day, Tony's wife received a text message from him, which read, "We need to talk." This was to be the last communication anyone received from Tony. When his wife texted back, she discovered that Tony had already turned off his phone. His cell phone has never been found and remains missing alongside him. At the time of Tony's disappearance, his life was marked by significant events. One of his 5 children was serving in the military in Iraq. Moreover, Tony was in the midst of a custody battle with his ex-girlfriend over their daughter, with a court hearing scheduled for the day after he vanished. Additionally, Tony had recently received a promotion at work. Tony's wife was deeply concerned about his well-being. She was adamant that Tony, being a devoted family man, would never willingly disappear, especially considering the custody battle. Sally Rawlings vanished from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, on May 26, 1982, and hasn't been seen or heard from since. 5 years later, her former husband, Gary Lee Rawlings, an airline pilot, was found guilty of her murder. Sally and Gary got acquainted in 1976 and got married a year later. They welcomed their daughter, Kimberly, in 1980. The family moved to Oklahoma City in 1981. Unfortunately, Gary was temperamental and had physically abused Sally on occasions. Sally decided to file for divorce in January 1982 and moved to a battered women's shelter with Kimberly. After the divorce was finalized a month later, Sally gained custody of Kimberly, and it was agreed that Robert would stay away from her for at least 6 months. Sally then moved into the Kirkpatrick Hotel in downtown Oklahoma City and enrolled Kimberly in daycare. In late March 1982, Sally began working as a secretary at Carnegie Corporation. Her coworkers and bosses noticed that even though she was competent at her job, she kept to herself and was occasionally seen talking to herself. On the day Sally went missing, she had breakfast with Kimberly at the hotel and then took her to daycare. However, she never showed up to collect her daughter and didn't return to the hotel either. During this time, Gary was staying in Colorado with his parents, but records show that he stayed in a hotel in Oklahoma City on May 24th and 25th. He rented a Plymouth Fury car while he was there. On one of those days, a man claiming to be Kimberly's father called the daycare to ask what would happen if Sally failed to pick up Kimberly. They told him that Kimberly would stay with the director. Gary also bought a .44 Magnum handgun and 9 bullets that week, telling the seller that he was going squirrel hunting. Gary attempted to rent a plane from Charter Air in Oklahoma City 6 times that month, but only followed through on May 26th at 10 a.m. He didn't return the plane until early the next morning, and it was missing the fuel cap and part of the carpet. Investigators later determined that Gary had refueled in Dallas, Texas, on the afternoon of May 26th. While there, he bought velour cleaner and informed Kimberly's daycare that Sally wouldn't be picking up Kimberly that night. Late that afternoon, he fueled up again in Houston, Texas, where a flight attendant found a large cloth bundle in the luggage compartment of the plane. He fueled up again near Houston that evening. Gary returned the Plymouth Fury on May 27th, complaining about it and getting a Ford LTD instead. The employees tested the Plymouth Fury and found nothing wrong but noticed the trunk mat was missing. Gary then arranged for Sally's possessions to be sent to Denver, Colorado, claiming she had moved there. He visited Kimberly's daycare and handed them a letter allegedly from Sally, saying she was moving to Florida and that Kimberly should be left in Gary's care. The daycare handed Kimberly over to him. On June 3rd, Kermagee Corporation received a resignation letter from Sally. Later, it was revealed that the typewriter used for the letter matched one at Gary's workplace and not any owned by Sally. A co-worker of Gary's had seen him using that typewriter on May 30th. Gary flew with Kimberly to Denver. Before leaving Oklahoma City, he asked his mother to bring his uniform and meet him at the Denver airport. When his mother, Loretta, met him, she saw that Gary was carrying Kimberly's belongings in a blue suitcase and a plastic bag. The sleeping bag he'd taken from his parents' home was missing. He told Loretta that Sally had gone to Florida with her fiancé and allowed him to take Kimberly for a month. Loretta found several suspicious items in Gary's suitcase, including the handgun, letters with Sally's signature, a can of velour cleaner, keys Sally used for work, a car rental receipt, Sally's savings book, Kimberly's birth certificate, and a photograph of Sally and Kimberly. Loretta didn't think the signatures matched Sally's but looked more like Gary's handwriting. Concerned, Loretta took the suitcase to her daughter's home and called the police. When they arrived, she showed them the contents and expressed her belief that Gary had killed Sally. He was eventually arrested and charged with her murder. Later, blood was found in the Plymouth Fury and the plane's cargo hold. The blood wasn't Gary's and could have been Sally's, based on blood markers. A firearms expert stated that the handgun in the suitcase, which held 4 live rounds, had been fired 5 times since it was last cleaned. At the trial, Gary's defense argued that Sally had a mental breakdown and left on her own accord. However, those close to Sally didn't think she'd willingly leave Kimberly with Gary. The prosecution argued that Gary killed Sally, put her body in the sleeping bag, and threw it over the Gulf of Mexico from the plane. Gary was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Sally Rawlings' body has still not been found. Rose Temperley was last seen in the early hours of February 2, 2016, at the nursing home where she resided in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. She went to bed at 10 p.m., but kept getting up. The staff last spotted her around 2:30 in the morning. When a staff member attempted to check on her around 4 a.m., Temperley's door was found locked. Upon gaining access via the bathroom, the staff member discovered that Temperley's room was empty. Her belongings were found scattered around the yard and the window was left open. The staff quickly contacted the police. Before she disappeared, Temperley's doctor had planned to admit her to the hospital. She was set to leave as soon as a bed became available. Temperley, who disliked hospitals, was upset about this. Although she had previously run away from foster homes, she had never left the nursing home before. Typically, she would return on her own after a brief period. Days before disappearing, Temperley was overheard talking with someone on the phone who she referred to as Uncle Charles. She claimed that he was going to make arrangements for her to attend a family funeral. However, neither Temperley's mother nor her stepmother recognized anyone by that name. Investigators are uncertain about the identity of Uncle Charles or his potential connection to Temperley's disappearance. As of now, Rose Temperley's case remains unresolved. Kristen Richardson was last seen at her residence on the 1300 block of Houston Street in Muskogee, Oklahoma, on May 25, 2018. She was packing supplies for Rocklahoma, a concert in Pryor, Oklahoma, where she was excited to see her favorite band perform. Her sister became alarmed when she could not reach Kristen and reported her missing on July 6. One of Kristen's roommates, Carl Bryce, stated that they had attended Rocklahoma as planned, and afterward Kristen departed with an unidentified woman. However, the police discovered inconsistencies in this account. Cell phone records indicated that Kristen's phone remained in Muskogee, which led the police to doubt that she ever went to Pryor. During the investigation, it came to light that Carl Bryce used Kristen's Oklahoma access card after she had disappeared. Additionally, Bryce and Kristen's other roommate, Cody Ray Campbell, had either sold or given away some of her belongings in the weeks leading up to when she was reported missing. The authorities detained both men initially as material witnesses in her case. They were later charged with possession of a stolen vehicle in connection with a truck that was discovered at their home. A breakthrough in the case appeared when Cody Ray Campbell provided the police with a tip claiming that Carl Bryce had stabbed Kristen to death. When the police searched their home in July 2018, they noticed a pile of dirt in the northwest corner of the backyard, and they could smell the odor of decomposition. Despite this, they were unable to locate Kristen's body during the search. On that same day, first-degree murder charges were filed against an unidentified John Doe suspect in connection with Kristen's case, but no arrests have been made. Cody Ray Campbell was sentenced to 5 years in prison on the stolen vehicle charge, and the case against Carl Bryce is still pending. No arrests have been made in what is presumed to be Kristen's murder, and the identity of the John Doe suspect remains unknown. Due to the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, foul play is strongly suspected in Kristen Richardson's case. On the night of November 3, 2007, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Angela Tucker, a devoted mother of 2, was last seen around 11:30 p.m. At the time, she was living with her children at her mother's residence near Apache Street and Yale Avenue. She informed her mother that she was making a quick trip to the store to buy cigarettes. However, Angela never returned and seemingly vanished without leaving any trace behind. This was highly unusual for Angela, who was known as a dedicated mother and a reliable employee. In a dark twist, just a month prior to her disappearance, Angela had accused a former boyfriend, Alan Shields, of raping her. On October 6, Angela claimed that she woke up in the early hours of the morning to find Shields inside her apartment, having broken in. She stated that he raped her and then fled the scene. In response to this, Angela obtained a protective order against Shields. He was arrested on charges of burglary and rape but maintained that their encounter was consensual. Shields was released on bail the next day, and Angela vanished shortly before she was slated to testify against him in court. Consequently, the charges against Shields were dropped due to insufficient evidence. Suspicion loomed over Shields concerning Angela's disappearance, although he vehemently denied any involvement and claimed ignorance regarding her whereabouts. In a separate incident in February 2010, Shields was arrested again, this time facing 5 charges including kidnapping, assault, and burglary. Shockingly, he was found with items that police described as a kidnap murder kit, including a gun, handcuffs, drugs, a mask, pepper spray, and disinfectant wipes at his ex-girlfriend's residence. Shields had broken into the house and lay in wait for over half a day before attacking the woman when she returned home with her young daughter. The daughter's prompt call to 911 is believed to have prevented a possible murder. In June 2010, 4 of the charges against Shields related to the incident were dropped, and in July, he pleaded guilty to felony assault and assault with a deadly weapon, receiving a sentence of house arrest. After his arrest, Angela Tucker's case received renewed media attention due to striking similarities between the cases. In both instances, Shields had previously dated the women, and both had sought protective orders against him. In addition to this, Shields was accused of plotting to murder a local businessman, Neil Sweeney, in September 2008. He and 4 other men, including his brother, faced serious charges, including first- and second-degree murder and conspiracy. Shields eventually pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy and agreed to testify against the others, receiving a sentence of 10 years probation. In April 2011, in a tragic turn of events, Shields took his own life during a standoff with the police after taking a child hostage in the same house he had broken into the year before. His ex-girlfriend's daughter, who had previously called the police on him, was the one who informed the police of the hostage situation. Shields released the child before turning the gun on himself. Angela Tucker's disappearance remains unsolved, and foul play is suspected. Her children are now being raised by relatives. Jimmy Robinson made a visit to his parents' house in Elmore City, Oklahoma, on October 1, 1976, close to midnight. He was looking forward to his 21st birthday, which was the following week. Jimmy was working as a salesman at a car dealership in Del City, Oklahoma, and was living in a rented room in Moore, Oklahoma. He was driving a dark green and white 1974 Toyota Celica, which was provided by his employer. When he arrived at his parents' house, an unidentified man was waiting in the car. Jimmy told his mother that he would drop off the man and would be back in 30 minutes. He also asked her to transfer his laundry from the washing machine to the dryer so he could have his clothes ready for work. He left around 2:30 a.m. and was never seen again. A few weeks later, the Toyota was found abandoned on Shields Boulevard in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Jimmy, the oldest of 6 children, had dropped out of high school during his junior year to marry his girlfriend when she became pregnant. However, the marriage ended in a separation a few years later. He joined the Army in 1974 but didn't serve for long. At the time of his disappearance, Jimmy had recently started a new job in Del City and was eagerly awaiting his first paycheck. His case remains unsolved. In the early morning hours of March 9, 2019, Aubrey Damron was last seen leaving her mother's residence on 280 Road, just north of Grove, Oklahoma. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning when she was spotted leaving. Prior to her departure, Aubrey had sent messages through Facebook to several friends, asking if anyone could give her a ride away from her mother's house. However, none of her friends had responded. Since then, there has been no sighting or communication from Aubrey, and it remains uncertain whether someone eventually picked her up. Notably, she left the house without taking her purse, mobile phone, or medication with her. Before her disappearance, Aubrey had been residing in New Mexico with her ex-boyfriend, J.C. Pearson. On August 18, she made the decision to return to Oklahoma and live with her family in order to seek treatment for drug and alcohol addiction. Later, Pearson moved to Colorado. It was 6 months after Aubrey's return to Oklahoma that she mysteriously vanished. A twist in the case occurred on March 12, when Dionette Rowbottom, who was a former close friend of Aubrey's, reached out to J.C. Pearson in Colorado. She told him that Aubrey was being held captive in Ketchum, Oklahoma, against her will because she owed money related to drugs. Rowbottom claimed that Aubrey's life was in danger, and she would be killed if the captors did not receive the money they were demanding. Rowbottom pleaded with Pearson to send money and promised that she would also contribute some of her own funds to help secure Aubrey's release. However, when the police questioned Rowbottom about the story she had relayed to Pearson, she confessed that her account of the kidnapping and ransom was fabricated. She was subsequently charged with extorting money from Pearson. When the police inquired what Rowbottom believed had actually happened to Aubrey, she stated that she didn't think Aubrey was truly missing and suggested that Aubrey's parents might know of her whereabouts. In addition to this development, the police received an anonymous tip suggesting that the boyfriend of Aubrey's mother had claimed to have murdered her. However, the authorities have not been able to substantiate this information and, as such, no suspects have been officially identified in connection with Aubrey's disappearance. Aubrey's case is particularly concerning due to the fact that it is highly unusual for her to have no contact with her family. The police consider her to be at risk, and her case remains open as the investigation into her disappearance continues. Manuel Salato was last seen in Oklahoma City on October 8, 2007. His wife, Exandia J. Salato, later claimed that he came home from Army Reserve basic training and left a few days later, never to return. He was reported missing after he failed to report for a weekend of military training. Manuel left behind his driver's license, checkbook, credit cards, passport, military ID, and cell phone. He also left behind his young daughter. A box of bullets was found in his residence, with 6 bullets missing. In December 2008, Exandia was arrested in Florida and charged with her husband's murder. On the day Manuel disappeared, he had confided in a friend that he was afraid his wife might try to kill him. Initially, he intended to spend the night at his friend's place, but changed his mind after speaking with Exandia on the phone, deciding to return home. Investigators discovered internet searches on her computer for ways to get rid of a human body. It was reported that Exandia confessed to 2 acquaintances that she had murdered Manuel, kept his body in the apartment in a plastic container for a week, and later burned it on a grill at another residence outside the city. Even though Manuel's defense attorney claimed he was still alive and had gone to his native Dominican Republic to be with another woman, Exandia was found guilty of murder in April 2011. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Manuel's body has never been found, but foul play is suspected in his case due to the circumstances. On October 22, 2021, Dwayne Selby was last seen in Temperley, Oklahoma. He and Jack Grimes, his lifelong friend, roommate, and business partner, who was 76 years old, had plans to travel about 4.5 hours south to a horse show with the intention to purchase a horse. They were driving a maroon 2001 Ford Taurus, a 4-door vehicle with license plate ETW 614. Both men disappeared and never made it to the horse show. They left behind 2 or 3 dogs and 14 horses. Dwayne Selby's whereabouts remain unknown. 3 days later, on October 25th, Glenda Cookie Parton, who lived an hour away from Temperley with her daughter and son-in-law, decided to file a missing persons report for her son. She went to Selby's house in Temperley to get his social security card, as the police told her they needed his social security number. Parton was seen visiting the home of Selby and Grimes, as a relative living nearby saw her car in the driveway. Later that evening, Parton was last seen at a Reese's store in Owasso, Oklahoma, around 8 p.m. She had given a ride to one of the ranch employees of Grimes and Selby. They bought groceries that were later found in Grimes and Selby's refrigerator. Parton appeared normal and not under any distress while at the store. Parton's daughter found it unusual that her mother had driven someone to the store that night, as Parton typically avoided driving after dark due to her eyesight. She has not been seen or heard from since. The following day, on October 26th, Parton's daughter and son-in-law began searching for her when she did not return home from what should have been a 2-hour round trip to Temperley. They found her red Kia Rio parked on the side of the road with the key in the ignition, but Parton was nowhere to be found. Parton's daughter noted that her mother never left the key in the ignition. Though her car was usually cluttered with various items, it was found neat and clean. Parton's pepper spray, which she normally carried in her purse, was on the car seat. Following his disappearance, Selby's car was found abandoned on Highway 75 near 56th Street North. On October 25th, Grimes's car was found at Mohawk Park. On October 31st, deer hunters found Grimes's body less than a mile from the home he shared with Selby, near 59th Place North and North Xanthus. He had been murdered. As of now, no one has been arrested and no suspects have been named in connection with his murder. Parton's daughter-in-law wonders if Grimes's known generosity in helping others, including homeless individuals and those struggling with addiction, might have played a role in his disappearance and subsequent murder. In November 2022, police announced a person of interest in the disappearances of Parton and Selby. However, the identity of this person has not been disclosed. According to authorities, there is no evidence that either Parton or Selby is still alive. The investigation into Grimes's murder, the disappearances of Parton and Selby, and other associated cases remains ongoing. In Norman, Oklahoma, two sisters, Josephine Coburn and her younger sibling Joyce, were staying at an apartment belonging to a family friend. However, on October 2, 1983, the friend reported to authorities that the sisters were missing. He explained that they had planned to go to the library on the day they vanished. When he returned to the apartment, he found that the sisters were already gone, and he never saw them again. They had left all their belongings behind. Initially, it was suspected that Josephine and Joyce might have run away, but as time went by without any word from them, investigators began to fear that they may have met with foul play. The history of the Coburn sisters is a tragic one. In 1968, their father was killed in a car crash. At that time, Josephine was just an infant and Joyce was yet to be born. They were separated from their elder sister, Rosetta, who went to live with her maternal grandmother, while Josephine and Joyce were sent to their paternal grandparents. In 1975, after their mother remarried, the sisters were reunited. However, their mother ended up forcing her new husband to leave after allegations arose that he had tried to molest Joyce and Josephine. In 1983, the two sisters found themselves in the middle of a family dispute in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. They left and moved to Norman, where they stayed with a family friend. This arrangement was intended to be temporary. However, the sisters disappeared not long after. There were rumors that Josephine and Joyce might have been involved in drug use before they disappeared. There have also been potential sightings of the sisters after their disappearance, leading investigators to believe they might still be alive. However, none of these sightings have been confirmed. Rosetta, their elder sister, believes that a family acquaintance might have been involved in the disappearance and possible murder of Joyce and Josephine. The man in question had a romantic relationship with Joyce. According to Rosetta, Joyce ended the relationship and the man, out of jealousy and rage, might have harmed them. The police have questioned this individual several times, but he has never been officially named as a suspect. Instead, he is considered a person of interest in the case. Interestingly, Josephine had mentioned to Rosetta in September 1983 that Joyce had ended her relationship with this man and did not want any further contact with him. Moreover, Rosetta claims that the man never returned any of the sisters' belongings, including clothes and photo albums, despite their family's requests. Since the sisters disappeared in October 1983, there has been no record of their names, birth dates, or social security numbers being used. The disappearance of the Coburn sisters remains a mystery, with lingering suspicions of foul play.